Hi, I am Andy Sakowski, and today I am a journalism major with a writing and publishing emphasis, but today I'll be talking about the business of photography. During my freshman year at Biola, I took this really cool class called Business of Photojournalism. In there we learned how to handle taxes, how to write a contract, and it basically showed us as freelancers how you make money. And it gave me a lot of confidence in my field, because in our field of freelance photography, you can lose your job at any point. It's just kind of come and go. You're not really sure where your income's coming. And so that class gave me a lot of confidence, knowing that, yeah, I can do this. And so the only difference for me is I do landscape photography. And so that's a little trickier. The question is, how do you make money off of that? And that's something I've really been thinking about as I exit Biola, and I'm about to graduate next month. But during my time at Biola, I spent a lot of time doing social media. I did a lot of internships in it. I took classes in it. That's something I really focused on. But still, what remains is my passion for landscape photography. It's something that I really love to do, and it's something I'd love to keep doing. And even if I could do it full time, that would be awesome. Over the last year and a half, I've been able to go to some really cool places. One of the places I went to was Death Valley, where we got to go see the super balloon. Sadly, the super balloon was not so super, so I have some other photos. Yosemite National Park in January, we did a 24-hour run and gun trip there and back. North Cascades National Park, that's my favorite national park I've ever been to. And then I've been to Big Sur 3 times in the last 9 months. So I've gotten to go to some really cool places, and if I could continue just being outdoors all the time, that would be awesome. But like I said, the question is, how do I do that, and how do I make money off of that? And so today I want to analyze 3 different landscape photographers and figure out what business tactics they had, what business models. What did they do that created an income for them and made it a full-time job? And so the first person I want to talk about is Ansel Adams. I love Ansel Adams. He is my favorite photographer. He inspires me so much, and I could probably talk about him the entire time, but I only have 15 minutes, so I can't. But he was born on February 20th, 1902 in San Francisco, California. He's well known for his Yosemite National Park photos. If you're thinking of his name, you're like, I haven't heard of him. You've probably seen his photography. It's everywhere. Something I could talk about later. But he used his work to promote conservation of wilderness areas, which is actually something that I do and I'd love to continue doing. He trained as a pianist at an early age and planned to make it his career at first. And then his first trip was to Yosemite National Park in 1916. His parents actually handed him a camera. This is the same model he shot with. It's a Kodak Brownie box camera, and they handed it to him. He was very lucky. His parents were kind of well off, so they kind of handed him things, and he just took it. And photography was something that he liked, and so this is that. I can pass it around. I just got to make sure. Do you want to? There you go. You guys can look at it. It's really cool. At age 19, he published his first photos, but his career didn't really take off till the 1920s/30s. Here's some of his photos. That top one and that one right there, those are probably ones that you guys have seen. The bottom right one though, that's my all-time favorite of his photos. I love the contrasts in there, but despite all that contrast and the heavy darks, you can still see all the detail, which is so amazing. He really paid attention to that detail. As all these photos you can, they're really amazing. Key to Ansel Adams is he was in the right place at the right time. People were moving out to the west. They've been out there for a few years now, but they were tired of being locked up in their houses. They wanted to see the national parks. I mean, they were in the west. We have some of the best beauty out here in the west. And so people wanted to go see the national parks, and they wanted to have landscape photography in their house, and they wanted to see it. He also spent a lot of time in Yosemite. He basically lived there. And he put in a lot of time. He waited for that right moment. He would go on hikes all day, go to the right place, wait till the light was perfect. He'd spot meter everything. He was very, very intentional in what he did. And so he didn't rush anything, but he also ended up befriending the owner of Best Studio in Yosemite. There he was allowed to practice on the piano, because at this time he was still a pianist, and he began to sell his prints there. He got to see what people liked, what they didn't like, and he eventually actually married the daughter, Virginia Best, of the owner of Best Studio's daughter, and he gave up his dream of becoming a full-time musician, and became a photographer. He had to choose, and luckily he chose the right one, as we know today. He sacrificed a lot. He missed the births of his first 2 children. He was out on trips, taking photos. The trick to him is he was well known, but he wasn't wealthy. Throughout his entire career, he ended up doing commercial photography to make money. He didn't get to commit to what he really wanted to do. He wanted to do that all the time, but sadly he had to make some sacrifices and shoot some commercial stuff to make the money. He didn't really make any money until the 60s when he met his business partner, Bill Turnage, and things turned around. He showed him how to monetize his fame, limited edition books, only selling so many of those books and things like that. And I heard this quote the other day. Someone said it's 30% photography, 60% business. So if you don't know how to handle the business yourself, you should hire someone. And sadly, Ansel Adams didn't wait till later in his career to do that. And you're probably thinking also you're missing 10% there. I know that. He didn't say what the 10% was, but I would say 10% is passion. You need a lot of passion to do this kind of work. And he was the first mass-marketed fine arts photographer because of this relationship. So I think the key to Ansel Adams was his networking abilities. He networked to get his prints sold. He networked when he married Virginia Best. He truly did love her, and he dated her for years, but that network definitely helped because he was able to keep selling, living in Yosemite, and then networking to finally meet Bill Turnage and turn his career around. My next photographer is Galen Rao. He was born on August 23rd, 1940 in Oakland, California. He was a wilderness photographer and a climber. And he was introduced to the wilderness at a very young age. I also was, that's probably why I'm super obsessed with it. And he started climbing at age 10. He started climbing first and then photography because he wanted to show his family his experiences while he was on the road and while he was climbing. At first he attended UC Berkeley for physics, but then dropped out and decided to do climbing full-time. And he was never formally trained in photography, kind of like Ansel Adams, and he became a full-time photographer in 1972. Some of his photos, the colors in these photos are incredible. Like most of us landscape photographers, he's very inspired by Ansel Adams. So this is my favorite of them all, but when you look at it, you can definitely see some Ansel Adams in there with the dropped horizon and such, but he knows what he's doing, and they're incredible. He originally set up a small automobile business to pursue his photography career. He wasn't really ever emotionally attached to it, and his heart was always in the outdoors, just kind of like mine is, and I wouldn't want to sacrifice it. And so what he did was he sold his business to pursue full-time photography. And he eventually was hired by National Geographic for an assignment, and he was doing it in pair with another photographer by the name of DeWitt Jones. For some reason, DeWitt Jones was called away, and he suggested, why don't we do an ascent of Half Dome, something he knew very well. He knew how to climb, and he knew photography. So he took his two best assets, and he proposed it. National Geographic got the photos. They loved it. They gave him his own spread, did two separate stories. And that leads me to my key point there. Take a chance. Galen Rao took a lot of chances. He took a chance by dropping out of Berkeley. He took a chance by selling his automobile business. And he took a chance by proposing a different story to National Geographic. When you get a story from National Geographic, you don't question them. You just take it and you're like, yes, because they're the best people you can work for if you do landscape photography. That relationship definitely helped. He continued doing work with National Geographic till the end of his career, till he eventually passed away. My next photographer is Rodney Loft Jr., and he's my last. He was born on January 20th, 1960 in Jacksonville, California, but he spent part of his childhood in Oregon. He was given his first camera at a young age by his uncle, and he actually has a master's in statistics from BYU, which is kind of odd, and he was a self-taught photographer, like the other two. Here's some of his photos. The Smithsonian actually love him, and so some of his photos are featured there. That top photo right there, I actually came across another photo last night that was taken from a different perspective. There's actually only about another foot of rock there, and just the fact that he framed it and taking advantage of that framing there, he thinks unlike anyone else. And the slow shutter speed there to capture that photo, they're all incredible photos. But he began working in the corporate world right after graduation. I think a lot of us probably have that pressure to go full-time into a corporate job, and he gave into that, and he was a statistician and mathematician. And he could still continue his practice of photography. He really loved it, and it was kind of a hobby to him, but eventually he became a full-time photographer in 1995. After that, in 2000, he spent 6 months driving around, just going to festivals. So that's how he made a lot of his money at first, was going to festivals, showing people his work, and then the other 6 months he spent driving around the country, just taking photos of landscapes. And then eventually in 2001, he was invited to participate in an art festival in his hometown, technically his hometown, close to where he grew up. And in 2009, he opened his first studio in the Mall of America just to kind of give exposure. And then in 2011, he received $650,000 in funding to open another one in San Francisco. So for Rodney Loft Jr., I honestly think the key takeaway is that he started from the bottom. I mean, he gave up his job. He took a chance, kind of like the other two. They all took chances, but they really started from the bottom. And forgetting that. Yeah, and he had to drive around. Just drive around the country. And he was really starting from the bottom and doing art festivals. Art festivals aren't easy. They're a lot of work. And so he took a lot of time doing that. So some of my key conclusions here, I would say, are there are so many different methods to success in photography. There's not really one true method to doing it, but the trick as a photographer, I think, is looking at all these different ones and taking away different things, you know, taking each of those takeaways that I had. And something else I noticed was formal training doesn't necessarily equal success. Just because I've been at Biola and I've taken all my electives in photography, that doesn't mean I'm going to be successful. None of these photographers were formally trained, and so what really matters is your passion, your drive, and your determination to make it a full-time career. Another thing is, that's kind of odd that I noticed from all of them, is they all lived on the West Coast. I think that's really important because most of our 59 national parks are on the West Coast. And so taking advantage of where you live, that's really important. And right now, I'm from California, so most of these photographers live in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Montana. I'm from California, and I'm planning afterwards to either move to Seattle or Portland and maybe stay here, but I definitely want to take advantage of where I live and put myself somewhere where there's a lot of landscape photography and a lot of opportunities. Like I said before, always network. It's super important. We're in our classes and professors are always telling us network, network, network. And it kind of goes in one ear, out the other sometimes, and we just like, oh yeah, we know that. But I think with me going through this and researching it, I realized how important it is. We really need to take advantage of all those networks and connections and never burning a bridge, because you never know when they're gonna help. And take chances. So many of these photographers took so many chances. And a good example is one of my really good friends, Andrew Kearns. He worked part-time doing all these different jobs, and he decided, I'm just gonna quit all my jobs and I'm just gonna pursue photography full-time. Less than 9 months later, he has 200,000 followers on Instagram. He's getting hired by places like Airbnb, Tom's, and places like that. And he's traveling around the country taking really cool photos. But the thing is, he took a chance and he decided just to go full for it. And I admire him so much, I'm proud of him for that. But taking chances as a photographer is so important. And also, it takes years of practice. Ansel Adams wasn't that good when he first started. 10 years in, he didn't do so well. But what we know today wasn't exactly what his work was before. So for those of us that are photographers, it's super important to remember it takes practice. Practice does make perfect, and you can't be brought down because of that. When your photos don't take that well, you just have to remember, the more I do it, the better I'm going to get. And that's super important to do. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this topic. This is something I'm super passionate about, as you guys can probably tell. I love landscape photography. So getting the opportunity to tell you guys about what my life's passion is, it's super awesome. Hopefully after graduation, I will be able to pursue a career in this. I don't think right away it's what I'm going to do. I think I'll probably do a little bit of social media work, get my feet wet, make some money, and then maybe get to the likes of these amazing photographers. So thank you so much for your time, and I would love to open up the floor to questions if you have any.